All right, we're live with Purpose Maker. I have a fun guest today, so I appreciate you guys for listening and coming in and doing this. We're going to be discussing a lot of things today. Today's title is Verdict and Values, and I have Mr. Joseph Shea here with me. I'm going to read a little bit of his biography, and then we're going to get into a really fun conversation. Joe's one of the most successful and experienced trial attorneys in the Midwest. He's recovered some record-breaking verdicts, which I assume if we can talk about some of those, we may hear about that. He's also been the special counsel to the Ohio Attorney General, and that's probably been on some very interesting cases as well. And then he went to Northern Kentucky University for law school, and he got his JD in 1974. I think he did try to retire, so we'll hear that story, and he got roped back into working. So, Mr. Shea, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for agreeing to be here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's start early. Where did you grow up? Where'd mom and dad?
Well, a little town of Norwood, Ohio, which is surrounded entirely on all sides by the city of Cincinnati. It's right square in the center, and it actually Interstate 75, 74, and 71 all basically intersect where the city is. And that's where the first Camaro car was ever built. And they made all the Camaros for about 15, 16 years at the Fisher Body Auto Assembly Plant in Norwood. My dad was mayor for 18 years. And so had a lot of trips through the Camaro plant to watch them being assembled.
Wow, some good things. Did you ever own a Camaro in your life?
No, funny thing, my dad brought one of the first ones home, and I said, actually, I like the Chevelle 396 better.
Oh, the Chevelle's a beautiful car.
Yes.
You don't still have one of those, do you?
No, but always been a car person, still driving around with 570 horsepower right now.
Oh, that's not too bad, as long as you can control it for sure. All right, so you grew up in this small little town surrounded by Cincinnati. So basically, it feels like a big town, right? Being that close.
It does. I went to Purcell High School, which my father went to, and when I got there, interesting football team. No one has ever cut, but they only have like 42 helmets. So you just run and do sit-ups and do laps until somebody quits.
And then you're down to 42.
And then you're down to 42, and that's the first day of practice. Until that is just who can hang on. And when I got there the year before, they were state champs, and Roger Staubach was the quarterback.
Ooh, I don't know that name. Tell me about him.
Well, he became famous in the state of he went to the Naval Academy and played football there. Was a quarterback there. But then before he could go to the pros, he had to serve his commitment to the service.
Yeah.
And when he came out, he became the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, wow.
Had a terrific career. And he's really beloved through to this day. I know I had a company that I founded that did online legal research. And my theory is that we would go to bar associations and offer them all this online legal cases, rules, and decisions, so that their members could have it for free as a membership benefit. And so I'm in Texas, and I'm talking to the board of the State Bar of Texas, and all the other big publishers are there, West and Lexus and et cetera. And so at the very end, they said, well, Mr. Shea, is there anything else you want to add to it? I said, well, I played 4 years of high school following Roger Staubach. There was silence in the room. The next thing you know, I won the contract.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. My little one, Hayden, she's the middle daughter. She's heading out to the U.S. Naval Academy Wednesday, her and mom, and the Naval Academy has been working pretty hard to recruit her. So we'll see.
That is a huge honor. Congratulations.
Thank you. She's also halfway through trying to get into West Point. So we'll see.
How exciting.
If she can pull either one of those off, it'd be pretty fun.
Well, your children have a history of being successful.
Thank you. All right. So, what did mom and dad want you to go into? Was it law?
Well, not really. My father was a lawyer. He also went to Chase Law School, which was a night school. And my junior year, the night school merged with Northern Kentucky to become part of their university. Um, but when I finished undergraduate school, I had a degree in philosophy, and if you get a degree in philosophy, you can either teach philosophy or you can become a lawyer. Not much else. I know I looked in the paper for weeks and weeks, philosophers wanted, and never saw
Nothing.
on that. No. So law school is sort of like, well, now what? Um, you got yourself into this. How are you going to get yourself out? So off to night law school I went, and then during the day I worked in educational television, including being a puppeteer.
Oh, that's interesting. So, educational television is for a certain age group?
Actually, it was we did we made programs which we actually sold to school systems.
Mhm.
We had a Spanish program. We had the wonderful world of words. So we would do a lot of production, and then they would be resold to other school systems. And it was a great deal of fun, and worked with a lot of people who were very talented, and learned from each one of them.
That sounds very creative. All right. So, you're working your way through law school. And then
Well,
when?
high school, well,
Yeah.
at college, my dad wanted me to go to Xavier College because he went there, and I said, I "Dad, I went to your all boys school, no girls for 4 years. I can't take another 4 years without any girls." And he said, "Well, that's fine." He said, "But, I'll pay for Xavier." And I said, "It's okay. I'll pay for University of Cincinnati because I happen to be a pretty good rock musician." So I worked my way through college in a rock band that later went to France and never returned. Freddie Meyer. You can find him on the internet. He became a sensation around Europe. And he had a peg leg above the knee amputation as a child. No one ever knew that. In fact, it's very difficult to even find anything out about his peg leg, but he was my roommate, so I know he had a peg leg. But he could dance better than James Brown, peg leg and all.
Uh-huh.
So an exciting fellow. He just died in Paris 2 years ago. Um,
His
and
heart.
the band manager was a terrific guy and took a lot of Americans to Europe that a lot of them never came back.
Mm. So, what part in the band did you play?
Well, I played guitar and bass, but in the band, I played a Hammond organ with a B3 organ with Leslie Tone Cabinet. That was my job.
Wow.
When the original gig was, we were going to go there for the summer and play at a bar at Saint Tropez. And I retired from the band just before they left because I had a funny feeling they weren't coming back, and I was still committed to go to law school. And when they got there, Bridget Bardot happened to live there, and they become very fast friends. In fact, she and Henry Barclay started a record company so that Freddie and the band could have a label. And he
Mhm.
went on to tour all of Europe and Africa on a regular basis until his death.
Do you remember the name of that company?
At Barclay Records. And there's a bunch of pictures of him and Bridget on the internet. It's always interesting to see because I thought, well, I'm better looking than he was. If I would have went there,
Nice.
I would have given him a run for his money.
All right. So, the decision to go to Cincinnati
Yep.
probably proved well. Is that where you met your wife?
Strangely enough, I lived on campus. She lived on campus. We were both there together for 4 years in a fraternity. She was in a sorority. We never met.
Wow.
She played a lot in my band. She remembers the band, but she came back a couple years later for a wedding of a sorority sister, and I was dating the sorority sister's sister, and we
Mhm.
met at a wedding 2 years after we both had graduated from UC.
Oh, that's a fun story.
Yeah.
We had talked about marriage advice. You had given somebody marriage advice, and I think if I remember correctly, it might have ended that relationship, but saved the girl. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think that as we're going through the historical parts of our life is that um, every day we face many forks in the road, and the choices that we make every day, they add up. They add up to who you are when you are my age.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I've looked at friends who were close friends, and I would see them make poor choices, and I see where it led them. And so, to a great extent, what we do with our lives is how we make each one of those individual daily choices that we face just hour after hour, because
Right.
they make a difference and they add up. Just look at your daughters already that have made great choices, and because of that, they're being rewarded and given opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we love them a lot. We push them, and we definitely want them to do the best that they can for what they're doing. All right. So you've also won an award in Ohio that very few attorneys win individually. What was the name of that award?
Oh, the Ritter Award. Yeah, it's given by the Ohio State Bar Association to one person or one entity each year, for those that they find have made the greatest contribution to the profession. So I was very honored to receive that a few years ago, and it certainly is. I'm thankful for all of those who were so kind to think of me worthy of being a recipient.
Oh, congratulations. That's an amazing honor.
Yeah,
Did that have to do with the trial stuff or some of the database that you were creating?
a combination, because I am a civil trial lawyer who actually tries civil cases to juries. Um, but at the same time, uh, it was really a breakthrough to put together hundreds and thousands of pages of legal documents that lawyers could search without any cost to their client, because nothing like that had existed before. And we went around the country, and half of the 50 state bar associations became basically our partners. And when they would come on, then we would go out and send all of the hundreds of law books with case decisions in them. We would send them to the Philippines or to other places that hand converted the text into a digital readable. So eventually, we were able to actually have the library for all 50 states and all federal courts. But it was really a wonderful thing because it helped level the playing field, so that no matter how wealthy or poor your client was, you could have the same access as everybody else to the data because it was part of your membership dues that you paid for your state bar.
Mm,
And it really leveled the playing field.
sure. Well, I just read a very interesting case, and these are some of the ones that I even text and email to you. Some attorneys were looking up some case law. They used AI. AI made up the case. So basically, I think the word now is called hallucination. They submitted the made up law in their what do you submit to the judge? What's that called?
A brief,
A brief.
yeah.
And they went backwards to research that and found out that these were fake. So are you seeing some of that coming now with this new AI stuff?
Well, AI is going to affect different industries in different ways and with different amount of impact. Medical doctors, for instance, people are going to wind up getting a blood test, a urine test, their vitals taken and is put into a machine, and the machine's going to come back with the differential diagnosis of what the AI says is the most likely um, pathology that you have that created the differential diagnosis.
Mhm.
Um, and at the same time, we're also going through a period where hospitals and physician practices are being bought up by hedge funds and other investments. Now, in the legal practice, no one who's not a lawyer can actually own any part of a law firm. But today, we're seeing a great deal of medical physicians' practices being bought up And it has an impact because once it's bought up, the physician loses a great deal of his autonomy, or her autonomy,
Hmm.
and direction of how the practice is to be handled. I know my own internist, when I come to see him, we get along great. He's a really smart guy. And what is interesting, he said, I only get paid for the first 5 minutes that we're here together, because anything over 5 minutes, I don't get paid for. And he said, but you've already been here 25. Let's give it five more and I'll let you go. So, so there's firsthand experience of how not only AI, but then also the changing of the guard. I mean, some hospitals you say, oh, they're not for profit, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hmm.
I mean, it's big business. Some CEOs of hospitals make $10 million a year in a salary.
Yeah, that's wild money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we we see so many people using the emergency room as their primary care physician. So the medical profession is going through some changes, and AI is certainly going to play a role. But I think it'll play, you know, the um, the areas I think will be most affected, at least at the outset, aren't going to be like surgery, and they're not going to be like your practice, but
Hmm.
internist and medical diagnoses are going to certainly find that AI is going to move in and play a big role. Now, how much money that changes hands as part of that is something we have to see.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, my practice is a PLLC, so it's a professional limited liability, which is the same thing. You have to have a professional license in medicine to be able to own any part of it. AI is a little funky. I have put some things into AI, like I really enjoy reading X-rays, and I'll put it in knowing that there's some kind of pathology on the film. Ask AI to look at it, and it misses it 90% of the time. So I'm very skeptical on how AI is going to roll out and do all this stuff. Uh,
Well, and Doc, I mean, one of the big questions is between AI and robotic manufacturing, what are we going to do with all the people who currently hold those jobs? How are we going to help them support themselves when they're being replaced by machinery? It's yet to be seen, but it's I was talking to a fellow lawyer not long ago who was on a panel with me, and he was saying like, "Oh man, I'll tell you." He said, "Could things be worse?" I said, "Oh yeah, Frank, that could be a lot worse." And he says, "Well, how's that?" I said, "We could be 40."
Having to deal with all this stuff again.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Um, but nevertheless, because we have children and grandchildren, we certainly worry for them of how all these,
how this stuff plays out.
yeah. And some of our resources, we have countries now who do not have enough drinkable water, and how these resources are going to be allocated. So I don't know. Maybe we need to have a smaller footprint. Maybe there should be less of us in the future. I don't know.
Do you think AI could help solve any of these issues?
Well, I think it can solve issues, but sometimes the solving the issue creates a new one.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it'll be a matter of. I'm just concerned when all the AI machines finally form a union, and start trying to take over entirely because we've created a Frankenstein that we no longer can seem to be able to control.
Yeah, I don't know who said it, but someone said the genie is out of the bottle. Right. So now
Yeah.
we have to deal with it.
Yep.
Something our listeners wouldn't know is you do a lot of medical law.
I do.
So that's why your understanding on the hospitals and stuff is really up to speed. Are there any cases that you can discuss that are done that are kind of amazing that you might have stepped in when nobody thought it could be won? Or how does a case work? Is it typically a patient gets injured and then you step in? How does that?
Well, there's a couple of things, and one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize. is that in the practice of medicine, we have state boards, we have Medicare overseen, we have the Joint Committee overseen. But when it really comes to the practice of medicine, it's very rare that you'll see them become involved with any kind of disciplinary action unless it involves drugs, sex, or underage patients. Short of that, I mean, just because somebody is a poor physician and provides poor care, about the only place that's regulated is through the kind of work that I do.
Mm,
Because bottom line is that if 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 litigation is brought and you lose the case, the only database that exists is in Washington D.C. where they keep track, and how they follow that is important because if you have a history, then insurance becomes very difficult to acquire because the insurance companies can have access to all that data. Now, the general public does not have access to it, but those who are writing insurance and of course those who are giving hospital privileges also have access to that data. So what lawyers do who do the kind of work is a large part is that it's a regulatory, and a lot of
mm,
times it's just simply maybe a hospital has a bad practice, and the bad practice doesn't get recognized until litigation has begun and the facts come out and everyone can see is well, that wasn't a good idea. We got to do this differently. Um, and and that's how changes are made, and I can tell you that most of the patients, or clients that I've had that were patients who either lost a loved one or severely injured themselves, that's by far their most important goal is I don't want my loss to be simply forgotten and overlooked, but if it would come to change so it doesn't happen to the next patient, that's actually the most, invigorating part of what the victims of malpractice, feel it's important. And it
sure.
does make significant changes. And it's up to the jury. You need three-fourths of a jury to agree. But all the testimony that comes in a medical case has to come from a reliable source. He has to be or she has to be a physician in the same field. Has to have a history of the doing the same procedure. And so it is state by state, but most states require even before you can file a suit that you have to get a affidavit of merit from a physician who's in the same field, who has stated that they have looked at all of the records and they've come to the conclusion that an existing standard of care was violated. And so you can't even malpractice by definition is when you have an affidavit that says it happened. And until you have that affidavit that says that it happened, it doesn't exist because
Mm,
it becomes a creature of a legislature enactment. And so the physicians are highly protected because they have to have a colleague who says, I've read everything that was involved and here's the mistake you made. But once again, a lot of times these things are hospital situations which simply go unnoticed until somebody challenges how they're doing it, and it leads to changes that improve the overall delivery of medical services.
sure. Do you have any case that you can cite? Kind of explain how this looks. Like, how
Well,
does somebody reach out to you? They've had an issue and they're like, I got to search. And then you have a very specialty in this area, correct? Like, not every
yeah.
attorney can handle this.
That is whether you were talking about my failed effort of retirement. So um, I had decided a couple of years ago that I would sort of remove myself, and so all of my lawyers in my firm, I saw to it that they got a good parallel job in another firm. And I got down to my last employee, who was my office manager, and I had already talked with a firm that was close to where she lived. They had three offices, but one was very close to where she lived. And so I sent her up to interview as my last employee, And when she got there, they said, "Well, why would you leave Joe's firm?" And she said, "Well, because he's retiring." And they said, "What's his cell number?" So here I am now at Ritters and Rickers, um, because part of what they said, you need to replace yourself. Um, this the area in which you practice, there's very few lawyers who are still doing it because it's expensive, it's difficult, it's time taking, but you need to stick around and teach some of our younger lawyers, the ins and out of what it is that you do. So that's how my retirement got ditched.
All right. So then, how much are they calling on you? Quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, it's still 50 hours a week.
That's
But it's nice because of, COVID made a lot of changes and not all of them weren't for the worse. Um, and uh, because of when COVID came along, courts were forced to pick up things like Zoom and conference calls and so on, where lawyers used to drive into the city, park the car, go into the courthouse, wait for the judge, spend 5 minutes with the judge, get their car back, drive back to their office, and bill the client for all that time. But when COVID came along, everyone's just started doing Zoom, and what used to take 45 minutes to an hour and 15 took 5. Um, at the same time, it allows me to practice law as if I'm sitting in Cincinnati while I'm sitting up here with you in Harbor Springs, Michigan. S-
yeah, that's nice.
So, well, it's nice, but it's also, if it wasn't available, I think the retirement probably would have been more successful.
All right. So, can you cite any cases that you know really well that like how it kind of played out?
Well, yeah, and every case certainly is different. And um, there's a case that I worked on where the person had a long history of no mental health issues, and all of a sudden, she had a altered mental status, and she was, acting like she was crazy. But this happened over a period of days. It's not like dementia that takes years. This happened over days. And so, regretfully, she was misdiagnosed of having some acute psychic pathology, where in fact she had an underlying medical problem, which results in what is called delirium. And
Mm,
while delirium is kind of hard to distinguish from other forms of psychiatric pathology, the big difference is there's a medical problem underneath of it that's causing it. And if you don't fix the medical problem, you can't fix the delirium, and it can be fatal. And so, in like this one particular case, from the get go, the admitting physician didn't see the patient, didn't look at the patients who came from another hospital because they had a bed shortage, didn't look at the records from the other hospital, and put her into the psych unit where she sat for 6 days,
mm.
complaining of various problems, including constipation, diarrhea, and vomiting. But in the psych wards, the nurses aren't used to really doing medical. They're used to de-escalating aggression and to preventing violent activities. Because generally speaking, if you're medically ill and have psychiatric pathology together, you still need to be in a medical ward until the medical problem is resolved. So, because she's in the wrong ward, the medications that were ordered were seldom given. And then on the 6th day, she contracted sepsis.
Oh, geez.
And because she was in this, you know, uh, unit in the hospital where they don't regularly really do medical, the physician ordered IV antibiotics for sepsis. Um, she never received them. They ordered massive fluid IVs. because she was because of her constipation, diarrhea, and vomiting. She was becoming dehydrated. To make a long story short, at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's charted in her chart that she said, "I'm going to die." Um, and the nurse said, "Oh, from what?" And she said, "Well, impaction." And it's all written in the chart. 10 hours later, she was dead from impaction of her bowel that perforated, caused the sepsis, and she died without ever getting the antibiotics that were ordered after the diagnosis was made.
Mm.
Um, and just they're not set up. They're not set up to handle the medical treatment. And so the patient only had one IV, and they would slowly use one IV rather than getting a central line or multiple IV lines. And so the things that would have saved her life were just never administered, and she passed away. So once again, the bottom of that is that, be careful. You got to have better um, gatekeeping on making sure that you don't put a delirium patient into a psychiatric ward because they're medically ill, and you have to really pay attention to that and put up a higher guard. Like there's a daily test they could have run. It's called an SCAM, and the hospital only had it run on the day that she was admitted, and it was positive for delirium, but the physician never looked at the chart
Oh
before she
boy.
admitted her. So, I mean, these are unavoidable. These are avoidable mistakes, and this was an avoidable loss of a life.
Mhm.
Eh, but this is how we uncover shortfalls and look for improvements.
So if you don't find that, the hospital sweeps that under the rug.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens is they say, "Oh, well, that was unfortunate," but no one does anything.
Mhm.
Um, and and once again, people like the Joint Commissions and conditions of participation for Medicare, et cetera, they can't. They simply can't spend that much time on every single case, and so they don't. And so it's very rare now. Anytime something unusual like this happens, there's supposed to be what is called a sentinel event investigation, which results in a root cause analysis that must be made by the hospital. But it's so interesting in so many of these cases. I will ask the nurses who were involved a year and a half after it happened, and I'll say, "Well, when did you find out your patient died?" And they said, "Last week when the lawyer called and said I was gonna be deposed." And what that tells me is there was no sentinel event. There was no investigation because no one had been asked about how this happened and why it shouldn't have happened. So, while those things are there, rarely do I see the sentinel events are actually, announced, and the root cause analysis actually performed, and that's why it falls upon, we, medical legal attorneys to, pick up that slack.
Mhm. So basically, you're holding the hospital accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, too, when the time comes to resolve the case, either the jury tells them they need to make a change or as part of the, um, the conclusion of the case, they agreed to make policy changes.
Sure.
So they go hand in hand, and as I said, um, the victims are just as important about the change as they are about recovery.
Mm. Are you working on nationwide, or are these kind of like down in Ohio? Where do these?
Um, I'm only admitted to the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the state of Ohio.
Come?
Now, I consult often with attorneys out of town who may be looking for an expert or they may be looking for a theory or something, but I don't actually become involved
Involved in
with
it?
the actual presentation of the case.
Mhm. All right. So if we're thinking about the next generation, like the young attorneys that you're training, right?
Mhm.
What is some wisdom that you give them?
Well, we can go back. I think the best thing for one of the best books I've ever read. It's about 2,200 years old. Not my copy, but the text. It's called "The Art of War,"
Mm,
And speaking of West Point, it's usually one of the very first books that they have cadets read,
mm,
because what it says is basically you always have to prepare for war. If you prepare for a settlement, you're going to wind up losing a war because you're not ready for a war. So every case you take, you have to assume it's going to go to a final verdict. There's going to be a full trial. There's going to be a jury. There's going to be an outcome. And in the meantime, every case you take, you have to take the position from the very first day that this is a war, and we have to prepare for war.
mm,
Because if we prepare for settlement, there's so many ways that that scent can be smelled by the other side, and then you wind up losing a war. So the most important thing, I think, for so many walks of life, is always prepare for the war.
mhm. So outside of your law firm, are there any other passions or things you enjoy? We're in northern Michigan. There's a lot to do,
Oh yes.
right?
Well, it we're coming into the season where there's a few places in the world that are any more beautiful this time of the year than northern Michigan.
That is
Uh,
true.
I know, and I keep reading things like AAA, and they keep telling people about the tunnel of trees. I keep telling them, yeah, we already have enough people up here.
Keep it a secret.
Yeah, take pictures of it and send it to them, but don't send them up here.
Hmm.
Um, and I enjoy the beautiful fresh waters. I've been all over these lakes on small boats, taking my young sons and all the way up into the Georgian Bay, and
Hmm.
and it's just pristine and beautiful.
Yeah, this is a fun place to enjoy the family.
Yeah.
Grandkids, right? You got a whole
Yes.
bunch of them.
Yes. All girls.
All girls.
Yeah,
That's what I
and
have. Three girls.
4 of them are about the same age. Um,
They
and
have to be good friends.
oh, they are. And um, we as grandparents, it's not our job to discipline and train our grandchildren. That's their parents' responsibility. But we're certainly proud of how good a job our children are doing raising theirs.
Hmm. So, what is the role of a grandparent?
Well, I gave you a copy of my book, How to Inherit More Than Your Cousin.
I did read that.
Yes. And it's kind of, it's kind of interesting. It's not really a legal advice, but it's full of the ways that grandparents, we can afford to be friends with our grandchildren because we really don't have the right or the responsibility to constantly be disciplining them.
Hmm.
So it's great we can be their friends without having to be in charge of their uprising.
Yeah, no, that's a good place to be
Yeah.
because you were busy raising your kids when you were growing up, and
Yeah, and we have a caboose that came along. Her name is Brogan, and she's kind of a riot. So at age 5, she would walk up to people she doesn't even know, and she would say, "Hi, my name is Brogan. I'm adorable but annoying."
and funny.
Yeah, and people will say, "Well, where'd you learn that?" She said, "My sister told me."
That's how her sister would describe her.
Yeah,
You're adorable
uh,
and annoying.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so
Oh, she's
funny.
a riot. She's an absolute riot.
Uh, do you think you will retire, or do you think you just keep going until you just don't feel like doing it anymore?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you had Kenny Rogers in The Gambler, and he got lucky; he died in his sleep. So you may wind up retiring and not even know that you're retired. So, but the important thing is, and particularly you would know as well as anybody, is you got to keep your health. I mean, so many people I know who have had incredibly successful lives, but they lost their health.
They get cut short.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so once again, you got to take care of all these forks in the road that include your health, amongst everything else, because those choices that you make every day will add up to how long you live and how well you live and how well all those around you enjoy your livelihood.
Mm. Those are some very wise words of wisdom. I definitely try to help people do that need that. Um, the way I kind of say it too is health has a huge influence on entrepreneurship. how you age, longevity, and I'm very passionate. Health is a wonderful place to interact with people. I've got a lot of wonderful clients, so it's been wonderful. And then this podcast kind of has branched out to being able to talk deeper with people on what they do in their personal lives. It's been absolutely amazing to learn what people have done and get their stories and get some of this stuff down on video. So,
Well, it's certainly a pleasure to share whatever I have to offer. But once again, I think the focus is every decision every day adds up, and don't think on any of them are unimportant. They're all important.
mhm. Well, I think that's some wonderful wisdom. Do you have any other things you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
Well, it's amazing to watch the grandchildren. They all have individual talents, and they work so hard at their individual talents. It just is so much fun to be a grandparent and get to watch all of that. And sometimes I tell my kids, we had you three kids, so we could have these grandkids someday. So it makes us so proud to watch our children raise their children to be kind, to be successful, and to have a work ethic.
Mhm.
In today's world, I don't care what famous college you graduated from. If you don't have a work ethic, it was a waste of your time and your money and the school's effort.
Mhm.
Because so many younger people today haven't found their work ethic, which is the most important thing they could have. And I'm hopeful that they'll come around and find it.
Well, that's wonderful wisdom. Mr. Shea, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's a very interesting conversation. Uh,
Dr. Michael, thank you for having me.
you do some very interesting work. Um, Thank you for the wisdom and talking about the grandkids and your life a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate it.